Testing 1, 3.
Good afternoon, everybody. We'll make a start 4 p.m. So thanks for joining us today. Those people that are just coming in, find yourself a seat. We are live streaming today's staff meeting to some of our staff that can't be in here with us, but are in offices and things like that, particularly the early part of the staff meeting with the anaphylaxis briefing, which all of us are required to be a part of twice a year, and particularly the open day information as well, which is relevant to every single one of us. So welcome. I hope you've had a good start to the week, and we are in the final part of what's been a really busy but extremely rewarding term one, and it's great to sort of have our college back to some sort of level of normality in terms of schooling, despite all the absence and so forth that we're faced with. I'm going to start tonight's meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we hold our meeting tonight is the land of the Peak Warrnambool people of the Gunditjmara Mara, who've educated their children in their language and spirituality and in the traditions of their culture for many thousands of years. I pay my respect to their elders, both past, present and emerging. It's a fairly full agenda, and we're mindful of the busyness of this week with Open Day, so tonight's reflection or prayer is a short one, but nonetheless an important time for all of us as we get closer towards Easter and as we journey through Lent, that it is often at this time that we think about the work of Caritas. And this year's theme, if you're not aware, is for all future generations. And we've been focusing on a different story each week in our Year 12 Search for Meaning classes with Caritas, and it's really interesting to get the students' perspective on where some of the money that they might contribute to something like a casual dress day like we had a couple of weeks ago can go to. And there's all sorts of programs and activities and different things happening right across the globe that Caritas Australia support. So our prayer today, if you join me in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, amen. As we pray for those driven away from their homes by violence, persecution or poverty, may our hearts be open to do all we can to rebuild the lives of others. May we be instruments of God's peace. Saint Joseph, pray for us. May the spirit of Catherine McCauley and Edmund Rice guide us in all that we do. Amen. We particularly pray and keep in our hearts and minds the people of Ukraine. I watched a story on the news this morning. I think it's a population of 40 million people, and they are saying now 25% of the population have actually left the country and have become refugees. It's staggering, 10 million people. It's nearly half of our population of our country. And there was a story about a couple of Aussie guys who were based over in Poland who've got these buses and they've gone into Mariupol and they're being, loading up people and getting them out of there. It's really inspiring that, it's hard for us, I think, back here to sort of think that we can do anything about it, but it's great to know that there are some Aussies over that way that are providing that support. All right, staff meeting agenda, and I thank Suzanne, who always does a magnificent job in helping prepare the agenda for us and all the information exchange, which just makes our meeting go a lot quicker. But nonetheless, when the agenda goes out to you like it did on Friday, there are a number of really important items in this information exchange that we are relying on you to take some time to have a look at in your own time outside of the meeting. And Suzanne, are you here yet? Right, up the back. Is the signing of the attendance being passed around? It is, so just remind people to make sure you let us know that you signed that you were in attendance at the meeting. But just a couple of really quick points about the information exchange. Child safety reminder there, the new ministerial order 1359 we'll talk more about in a future staff meetings, but the child safe standards will be updated in July, and just a reminder that mandatory reporting online module is something that staff need to complete by the end of the term. So if you haven't yet done that, completed that, saved your certificate and then passed that on to Shirley, that's something that staff are required to do before the end of the term. Epilepsy management. We have a number of students in the college that have significant challenges with the medical condition epilepsy, and there's some great resources and information shared in the information exchange about that. If you're teaching a student that has epilepsy, it's really important that you're aware of what some of that information is and those medical plans and how to go about supporting a student if they were to have a seizure. There's been a heap of work done on policies of late. At the leadership team meeting recently, we approved updated policies for our anaphylaxis management, which I'm going to go through a very quick briefing with you today at the meeting. First aid and infection control, Sun Smart and duty of care. They're relevant to all of us. The duty of care one's probably the most important one for most teaching and learning diversity assistants, and would be the one that I would encourage you to have a bit of a look at, just to refresh your mind on those sorts of things. Updated policies, however, also include a draft of the gender and sexual diversity policy. This is a new policy which actually supports our child safe standards and the new ministerial order around ensuring that we provide support for diversity, and that's all types of diversity, including paying particular attention to the needs of LGBTIQ+ students. So that draft policy is there. If anyone has found any time over the last 4 days to have a look at that, or post this meeting wants to have a bit of a look at that and provide any feedback to Claire or the wellbeing team, you're most welcome to do that. We'll be sharing that with the College Advisory Board next week. And in the agenda, attached to the agenda, was also the Emmanuel College Teacher Resource Booklet that a huge amount of work has been done, and we've had that sort of put all together, and that'll be shared, and links to that document. Really valuable resource for anyone that's a homeroom teacher or a mentor. It basically has everything that you might require to be able to perform your role in that particular part of the school. everything that you might need to refer to or whatever is all there in that one document. So it sort of complements the Emmanuel Teacher Charter, the Emmanuel College Teacher Resource Booklet. Thanks to Claire in particular for putting all that stuff together, but then to Melissa who sort of styled it all as well. Alrighty, really quickly, our first item as we move to the agenda is an anaphylaxis briefing, and I'll start by going through this. I know a lot of people say, oh, but I've done my anaphylaxis training, I do first aid, why do I need to hear all of this again? The ministerial order that's related to anaphylaxis is number 706, and part of this requires all schools, all Victorian schools, to undertake a twice yearly briefing in the management of anaphylaxis. And so you might recall, if you were at a staff meeting in about July or August last year, we would have done one of these, and here we are again doing our first one for this year, and we will do another one later in the year. And it's really important that we are just reminded very briefly of the students in our college who are at risk of anaphylaxis. Just a quick reminder of the causes and signs and symptoms, the training options that are available to you, some reminders about the use of the auto injector, and some of our anaphylaxis management policy. As one of the staff who are trained to be able to be a school anaphylaxis supervisor, it's me that's providing this information to you today. So we should all be aware that anaphylaxis is a severe, rapidly progressive allergic reaction that is life-threatening, and all of our students across both campuses will have their student medical action plans. You can find these on Simon and also on students' Operoo profiles. And their auto adrenaline injectors supplied in their kits located at the various receptions or sick bays around the two campuses that we have as well. You can find the updated college anaphylaxis management policy attached to the staff meeting agenda. So here is the medical poster that we have located in all of our staff rooms and staff offices, and there's a link to this particular action plan along with all the other medical plans that people need to, or identifying students that are on a medical plan located on Simon. But it's really important again that you identify students that you are teaching each semester, or if you take up a new class because of a change in your timetable, you're aware of who these students are. And you can see that we have a spread of students in Year 7 and Year 8 in the junior school, a few there in Year 9, and this year the poster has been updated, and the colour-coded ones identify students in the particular houses that they belong to in the senior school as well. It also identifies underneath each of these students what the particular allergy is that they have. So it is important, and one of the things that we perhaps have been finding, and something that we would perhaps want to highlight to you in today's briefing, is that if you leave an extra and you have a student who has a significant medical condition, that you make a little note of that to the person who might be taking that extra, whether that be a CRT or another teacher here at school, so they're at least aware of that. Sometimes when they mark the roll, it will come up with a little, sort of signal there that alerts them that there's something that they need to be aware of, but it certainly makes life a bit easier if we do that. Just a quick reminder about some of the signs and symptoms of allergic reactions and to anaphylaxis. I know a number of staff just recently completed their first aid a couple of weeks ago, and so you will be familiar. For most of us, we would have done our most recent first aid last year. For some, it might have been the year before. And you'll know that every 2 years we require everybody to actually demonstrate that they can use this. And so one of the things that you would potentially be asked is to talk about what some of those signs and symptoms of an allergic reaction would be. And probably what's really important about that is to identify the situations in the school ground or in the yard, or you go on an excursion where these particular things might become more relevant to the students that are in your care. And particular weather conditions might cause these sorts of things. Probably, if we consider that a lot of anaphylaxis is related to food allergies, we're getting near the end of term. It's often, particularly term one, it's a time where we tend to want to share food with students, might be Easter eggs, those sorts of things. Just need to be very mindful of those scenarios or situations which could potentially, lead to anaphylaxis, and be mindful of that. And I can never really spell the word, but it looks like it's wrong in that heading, but it's not. Okay, moving right along. So just for the visual learners, that was the first picture. Here's for the others that like to prefer just to see things in dot points, but there are some of the signs and symptoms of anaphylaxis or an allergic reaction. So they are varied, and you need to be aware of all of those sorts of things and look out for them. The training that we legislated in doing sets out that, yes, we all need to be aware of anaphylaxis, and it's really important that you get the opportunity to undertake this training each year as part of your professional duties as a teacher. So just make you aware, Mick Clements, Steve, Jace Maloney, Lucille and myself are trained in auto-injector competency. And I guess if you have questions about anaphylaxis, you can come and speak to any of us. We are at the moment getting a couple of other staff to get trained up as well. So we've got slightly better coverage over at Rice campus as well, now that we've moved things around a little bit. So just making you aware of the people here. Those people that did first aid recently and did anaphylaxis training, you would have received an email from Lucille and a link to a document that says that you've got 30 days from having done that training to actually come and sit down with the people listed there that I talked about and actually go through which takes about 10 minutes at tops, go through the training here for that. So if you are one of those people, please get that done before the end of term, or it'll be beyond your 30 days when you come to have to get that. And when you go to that particular session, which I know Steve and Jason, I think are giving up of some of their time next Monday for people to do that, you need to take your certificate with you that says that you've done the other training before you do that. For the rest of the staff who didn't have to do it at the end of last year, we'll all be doing this again at the end of the year in December. Just a reminder of the AXIA action plans, which you will be all very familiar with, and you will see around, and you would perhaps see these in the medical kits of students that have anaphylaxis and have a kit. And again, be aware, it gives some good advice as to what to do when somebody might be experiencing the symptoms, and from that it also gives us some great information about what we actually need to do in administering the EpiPen. There's also now an AniPen, or an AnaPen as well, and some of the people who did the new training will be a bit more familiar with that. We actually don't have any students currently in the college who require one of these, but it will be potentially something that we'll need to know about in the future. I'll just go back to that one so people can see again, but just a reminder to everybody, we have a range of these devices located around. These are the practice ones, obviously. Blue at the top, orange where the needle goes, so we all know that we pull off the blue as part of the safety release. Blue to the sky, orange to the thigh. We hold it in place with our fist in the thigh, clicking down. I won't click down until I take this off. 1, 2, 3. It does say here 3 seconds regardless of the instructions on the device label. It used to be 10 seconds, and sometimes we know that people have said that you've got to give it a rub afterwards and all that sort of stuff. You don't need to do that. All you do need to do is ensure that when you administer it, that you check for, you're not going to put it in someone's pocket where their phone is, or on a seam, all of that sort of stuff as well. Before you do that, though, you'd be checking the use-by date. You know that they've got a little window there where it's check that it's not too cloudy, the actual liquid inside, all of those sorts of things that you would be doing prior to administering that. Our first aid emergency response from there, if we've administered it, we'd be contacting an ambulance. We would be maybe writing what time we administered this on there, and we'd be also passing that over to the medical professionals when they arrive, and giving that sort of information from there to them. I'll move on to the final slide, which is where you can get support and training. There is also now a link on the side of Simon under a range of information about medical conditions and so forth, where you can do anaphylaxis training or explore some of the websites there that will give you information about that if you're still a little bit uncertain, or you're worried about a student in your care that you do spend a lot of time with, and you just want to know a little bit more about how to go about doing all of this sort of stuff. Okay, thanks everyone for listening there. All right, we are on to if you have any questions about that, please get in touch with myself or any of the other staff who are trainers in that area. The next item is a really important item at tonight's meeting, and it is our focus on Open Day. And to start, or to finish with myself and Joe, but we'll go through just a couple of nuts and bolts type sort of items. But before we do that, Peter would like to speak to everybody that's either here or that's watching via stream, or anyone who's going to watch this recorded once it gets sent out, for those that are absent today, about Open Day and why it is such an important open evening, why it is so important for us as a college. And while he does that, all going well here, Peter, we will watch a clip. You want to hold that until you talk about that? Yep, okay, I'll pass over to you and then I'll let you hit the button. Hopefully it'll work.
Thanks, Michael. It seems like a little while since we were last here for a staff meeting, and it probably is around about 10 weeks, I think, since our first staff meeting at the beginning of the year. So I do just want to take 30 seconds to say to all of you a huge thank you for what you've been doing throughout this term one. It's been exhausting. It's been a long term as well, and we're not quite there yet. And there's all the uncertainty and all those sorts of things in the background, the challenges of people being unwell, people being COVID positive and close contacts, and all those sorts of things that have impacted on us. And I think that we've done a really extraordinary job to be able to run as many of the things that we have as successfully and smoothly as we have. Last week is a case in point with 3 new immersion experiences for the new Year 9 program. But that's honestly, it's just one of many things that has happened this term. So a really sincere thank you to all of you for the work that you've done over this first 10 weeks and another week to go. Let's get over the finish line at the end of the term. Just in the lead up to Open Day, also a really big thank you to all of those people that have been preparing the place, preparing tours, preparing for enrolments, information sessions and so on. I'm not going to go through that list of people. It's quite an extensive list of people that it's everything from what's on our website to what's in the newspaper to what you can see in the grounds to where the buildings are finished and there's fences in the way of where we want to be and so on. All of that is all sort of going on there in the background, trying to be ready for Wednesday night to open up to the public for them to come and have a look. We know that we've got over 700 people booked in for Wednesday night, which is quite an extraordinary response. We do have a new booking system or a new sort of enrolment system that we're using this year for the first time, which does allow us to track all of that. And we don't have a real genuine point of comparison with previous years, but our instinct tells us that that number is really high, and that's really great. You might ask the question, well, why do we really need an open night? Why do we need to do that when it would appear on the surface that there's plenty of people that are going to apply for Year 7 places for next year, and potentially other places throughout the other 5 years as well? Well, look, the reality is that every school that's a fee-paying school needs to ensure that it has enrolments. We're no different to any other fee-paying school in that regard. And we budget really carefully on the basis of those enrolment numbers. And this year's been an interesting year because between the time when we budgeted for this year and we employed the number of teachers and staff that the school needs to operate, a really significant number of our students have gained employment and apprenticeships and so on. And that is absolutely fantastic. Got no issue with that. That's what we want to see. We're very successful at that. But all the costs that we planned for last year based on having, 1,270 students are all the same when we have 1,250 students. So it's absolutely essential that we get young people enrolled into the school. It ensures our jobs. It ensures that we can do what it is that we have planned for the future. So in terms of the open night, and just in terms of numbers, we anticipate, based on the numbers that we know are out there in the primary schools across the region, we'd be anticipating 9 classes at Year 7 next year. So an enrolment of, I think it's somewhere between 225, 232. We don't think that there are 10 streams this year because of the numbers in the primary schools, but you never quite know it. What message do we want our visitors to take away from the open night this week? I think that's really straightforward. We really want our visitors to leave here knowing that the reimagined Emmanuel that we've been talking about for a lot of years is here. It's in place, it's arrived. So our junior school in the Gould Centre, our Year 9 program operating at Rice campus called 9 at Rice, and finally, after all these years, our senior school all together in one location and with an exciting new vertical structure. We would want them to leave here knowing that the facilities that we've been developing are now online and operating, and I think one of the exciting things is that there's lots more projects in the pipeline. That the consolidation of campuses that we announced at the end of last year, we hope will be completed in time for 2025 to begin with all Emmanuel students here on this one campus here. And that plans for the Edmund Rice Centre, which is the new Year 9 environment located on this campus, are also they're really quite advanced. And that's what we'd like you to have a look at here now. If I've pressed the right button up the top there. Sorry, I've just got to put my glasses on. So that you're seeing this now for the first time, this animation of what our new Year 9 Centre is going to look like. There's no sound behind this, so I'm just going to talk as we go through it. You can see the approach happening here from this side of the school, Mercy Place on the left, the existing courts to the right, moving through that space there where agriculture was at one stage, and coming to the Edmund Rice Centre, which is the name that we've agreed on for the new Year 9 Centre. Approaching or going down the side, this is really down the back of the courts there. You can just see the edge of the courts there, and around the low point of the building there, which is where the Crawley Street access is. That's not going to be a new entrance to the school. There will need to be an entrance there for emergency vehicles and those sorts of things. This is the lower level of this building. It's essentially, it's really only a one-storey building, but it's built over the topography of the landscape there, which creates, it does create a first and a second floor. There's the whole of the building above with Mercy Place just here in this corner. We're going down into one of the two courtyards that's created by the structure of the building. And we'll go into an area there called the Reflective Garden, and we're about to go into the entrance of the building now and through the building. So going in essentially into the entrance there and through what is the ground level of this new facility. And the areas you'll see come up there, just had discovery there, you'll see that the areas have been developed in line with the different components of the 9 at Rice program. So we just saw the area for discovery. We're coming down the corridor here and we'll see communication come up here shortly. And as we go round the corner into this next section here, we'll see discovery. I think it's discovery will come up. wisdom, Again, each of those areas reflecting the different components of the Nine at Rice program that have been developed. So we're coming out of that level back into that reflective garden, one of those two courtyards, and we'll go back into the building now and go down to that lower level. You'll see an area here that has seating for 250 students. That could be parents, that could be an information session, presentation night as part of the program. You saw the covered court area there for sports and all of those sorts of things. And this lower section here, the project-based learning part of the building. And it'll stop there. We're pretty pleased with the way that has come up. You could obviously tell a lot of planning, a lot of discussion and consultation around what do we want the building to do to lend itself to perform for our staff that are delivering Nine at Rice. So just a couple of really final reminders from me. Were you going to go through those ones?
Well, you can.
I'll let you go through them.
Right.
I'm just going to finish up by saying that just before going into that animation there, I asked the question, what's the message that we want our visitors to take home? Well, it's about the reimagined Emmanuel. It's here. It's happening now. We're living it. We're a part of it now. New facilities up and running, clearly plans for the future as well. I think being able to talk about our plan for the future is one of the strengths of our information night. I often hear people say that hearing about where we're going and what those plans are for the future is a real strength or a real positive take-home message for people after open night. We'd certainly want them to leave here with an insight into the priority that we place on learning and teaching, our core business, and that there are opportunities for all students at Emmanuel. There's a broad-based curriculum, there's something for everyone, there's a place for everybody, and an opportunity for all to succeed. It's obviously important that we're a Catholic school and that we communicate that message. A Catholic school with a footprint here that's 150 years old and yet 31 years young as Emmanuel College. And that we're a fee-paying school, and I'll talk about that in all of the information sessions and explain very clearly why we charge fees and what we do with those. So my final message before Michael just takes us through these last few things here is that it's possible that you will be asked questions that you don't know the answer to, and that's okay. It's not feasible to expect that you have answers to absolutely everything. The only thing I would ask you in that situation is not to fabricate an answer. It's really important that we are honest in our approach. And if there's something you don't know, simply say, I'm not over that, or that's not my particular area, but the person that would be great to speak to about that is, and name that person, and if you can identify where they'd be able to speak to that person. Could be back in the Emmanuel Centre when they finish their tour. So that's all from me. Thank you in advance for Wednesday night. It will be a long day. There's no doubt about that. But we made that decision 18 months ago, or whenever it was, that we would run with information night during the week rather than coming back on the weekend. And I know that whilst Wednesday will be a long day, I know come the weekend we'll appreciate being at home or doing whatever it is that we're doing rather than being at an open day. So thank you in advance, and Michael, back to you.
All right, thanks, Peter. So just some of those reminders, and again, some of you, apologies, that have been here a while and you've been to the odd open day or two, but we have a large number of new staff this year, and some that came throughout last year and weren't here when we had our open evening. So if you are in that situation, and even after today's briefing and having read all the other documentation attached to the agenda, you're still a little bit uncertain of anything, by all means, please talk to somebody who'll be able to help answer those questions for you. But just those really key reminders. I think Peter talked about not fabricating an answer about something if you're not aware of certain things. I think my big message about open evening from the point of view of is we just, as much as it's near the end of term and we might be a little bit tired, as you know, we sometimes like to say, we need to be up and about. You know, it's one of those types of events where the energy and the enthusiasm that comes from the staff and from our wonderful student helpers, all 160 of them that have put their hand up to be here, says a lot about the fact that we have lots of young people in our school community who want to be here and be proud of the fact that they belong to this community. And I hope that all of you, in your interactions on open evening, will feel the same way, and that whether you're on a stall in the expo, or whether you're greeting people when they come into a car park, or whether you're leading a tour, it's really about trying to promote that really positive, vibrant, dynamic learning community that we are. Professional dress, so unless you're doing something that requires you to be in other types of clothing that's more appropriate. Make sure, please, you've got your name tag or your lanyard, whatever it is that has your name tag on there. For those people that don't teach period 6, right, there will be snack and food provided in the Macaulay staff room from 3 p.m. So if you're not teaching period 6, we'd encourage you to duck in there then and perhaps grab a bite to eat just to tie you over during the time. Please be mindful that there'll be staff from Rice campus that wouldn't be able to probably get over here until after that. And obviously there are people teaching period 6 on a Wednesday. So Joe has organised this year just for some plates and all that sort of stuff, so there'd be something there if you're feeling a little bit hungry before you go off to your area to grab a plate, pile a couple of things on it and take off to wherever it is that you've got to go. So that's in the Macaulay staff room. We are also doing a barbecue for guests as well, and that'll be at the end of the tours, which finish in the cafe. So if, again, throughout the 4 hours you're getting a little bit peckish, you can always get yourself down there and grab a snag. Car parking is always challenging for us. Steve, the asphalt, all good? Yeah. Okay, finally. Talk about leaving things to the last minute. Obviously, having the front courts area now asphalted will mean that parking for guests will be able to occur, in front of the Emmanuel Centre on those courts down the front. I'd be asking staff it would be great if staff could move cars from the Gould car park and move them to the top courts after school, so that it allows our guests to be able to park in all of that area around the Gould building and those other car parks down the front. We do have, obviously, guests coming at staggered times, but there will be the peak busy times, and it just makes it a little bit more manageable for our visitors if they don't have to park so far away. We have a heap of student helpers, as I said, and they've all been allocated jobs, and I thank Claire and Leah, who've been working with student leaders, but just all the other kids that volunteer as well. So please don't in the next day be talking to kids and saying, yeah, come to the open day, no worries, it'd be great to have a few more people. They've all been allocated roles. They have to have an operoo filled out. It's not as simple as just saying, yeah, just come along. Thanks for all of that. Commonly asked questions, I think there are several, but one of the main ones Peter mentioned before is that there will be 9 homerooms around about that 25 to 26 mark in terms of students in a class is often a regular one. So just a quick reminder, I suppose, for people so you know what the format of the evening is. There are 3 information sessions happening here in the Whiten Theatre, and there are the times, 4:30, 6 and 7. And there are 3 tour times, and they are from 4:15, 5:30 and 6:45. So we already know, Joe, don't we, that the 5:30 tour time has 290 people who have booked to come at that time. Now, some of those people will be arriving earlier and having an information session beforehand, and then coming down to the Emmanuel Centre where all the tours leave from. Others will just arrive around that 5:30 time for their tour, and some of those people will be in an information session at 7 o'clock. So it's a big coordinated effort from everybody, and if you're leading a tour, to ensure that you get your tour on the go, keep it moving. Whilst we don't want to be sort of just racing around the place, we have learning in action, and we do have, different areas of the campus that we want people to walk through and see what's going on. But when they get to that area, if you're in that area working away with some students or you're in that space, please don't stop the group and have a 5-minute conversation with them. That is not what we need. All right, and if that happens, we will have tour groups banking up all the way through. So we really need to keep the tours moving along. People can always come back to the Emmanuel Centre, to the expo, and ask questions about certain areas that they've seen. I'd like to thank Justin, who's put together the staff roster, and you'll be able to click on the link there. We're going to share this. Well, Jace already has this, but we'll share it with him again and ask him to put this in the his email that he sends out each morning, tomorrow and Wednesday, so that you can see where you're located, all of those sorts of things as well. There's some really important information there to take note of. Just mindful of the time, so I'll just keep moving along. Here's the brochure or the information. If you're leading a tour, it has all of that information. I'll just highlight the tour because, again, this has been shared with the agenda, so hopefully you've already had a chance to look at this. All tours leave from the Emmanuel Centre this year. All right, so that's different to last year, so whether you're here or not, all right, all tours leave from the Emmanuel Centre at those 3 times, but they'll be staggered, obviously. Down into the industrial skills, up the road there. Obviously need to be really mindful with your group when you're walking up the road, particularly if there's people driving up there to try and park and all that sort of stuff. Really want people to highlight the Gould Centre and that junior campus. Annabelle did a wonderful interview that'll be on the radio on Wednesday morning, highlighting the fact that we now have all of our junior students, our Year 7s, in that, their own space. So we'll be taking groups through a couple of the lower level classrooms there, really just so that people can see that area. And so teachers in the junior school, if you're teaching over that way, period 5 and 6, we really want to make sure that that's all neat and tidy by the end of the day. The other thing I wanted to highlight about if you're on a tour and you're walking past the oval there is that you could highlight and point out over past the big green shed and the paddock behind it is where the Year 9 Centre will be, so that people who've been here for an information session with Peter can make a connection between what they saw there and where it actually is going to be located. Food tech, either room, you don't have to go into both. And if you're hungry, you might be able to get something as you walk through. Up through the C corridor, take yourself into one of the science labs, but not all of them. When you come out of there, up around the outside of the D block there, down into the library, out the library at the last meeting room, around the outside of the convent. There are some changes to the tour. We're trying to keep the tour to about an hour, and we just can't show people everything. So we didn't go over to Gould last year because we didn't feel like Year 7 parents and future Year 7 parents needed to see where Year 9s were based. But now that's the junior school, we really need people to get over that part. But it does make the tour longer. So we're not taking people through the new classrooms up here, which are senior school. We're not going into the chapel this year. We'll go around the outside of the chapel and the convent, stop there and give some information about the chapel and about being a Catholic school, but then move in through creative arts and textiles and past media, down the stairs, in through the this back part of the stage here. You can go into any one of the tute rooms and show people there. Bridget will have her voice choir working out of the classroom in there, so you could pop in there, down the stairs, in the back here, out around, and then you finish up in the cafe space. Some people from their tour will need to come into here, others will need to be sent back to the expo. So I explain that to everyone because you might not be on a tour and you might be on a table in the expo at the moment or doing something else, but you might quickly find yourself being asked to jump on a tour. All the information that you could need to give people, and when you're on those tours and when you're getting to the points, is in this document. If you stick to the script, right, you'll be fine. And the expo will be set up tomorrow afternoon, period 6. And so people who are helping set up displays, faculty heads or maybe other staff who are helping faculty heads because they might be teaching most of the day on Wednesday, you'll be able to get all that sort of stuff set up over in the Emmanuel Centre also during that time. Joe, anything else? No? Okay. I think we're pretty right. We just need to keep our fingers crossed that the weather does its part for us. And it should be a great event. And as I mentioned this morning, please try to reinforce that, keep the grounds and all the great work that Danaher's have been doing to get our school looking fantastic. Keep staying that way for Wednesday night. Alrighty, thanks for everyone's support. Yes, Josie? Yeah, as in leaving their cars there. Jaffa might come over and pick people up. He might be able to. We'll find out. It would be great if staff could leave their cars at Rice and walk back at the end of the evening, or be bussed back when we're all packing up. Yep. It's tomorrow afternoon. The tables will be set up period 6 and after school, anytime Wednesday. And thanks to the PE staff who are obviously out of the Emmanuel Centre for all that time as a result. Staff that are here that don't need to be here for pivot and the ARM process are welcome to leave now that you've heard your briefing about the open day and anaphylaxis. All other teaching staff need to stay, and we'll get through the last part of the meeting in the next 15 minutes. Yep.
Don't be envious, everyone. Okay, we'll get cracking. I was hoping Ian would be out the back there playing a bit of Queen for a bit of mood music, but have obviously finished. But look, I'll be really quick. Just big thanks for interim reports. They don't take too long, but we got them out by 8 a.m. this morning, and parents have them. Conferences, they open for both the occasions at 6 o'clock. So please see me. Last chance for any blockings. I think I've advertised that about 4 times now if you want certain blockings that are reasonable. And you will be shown how to create a Zoom link especially for new staff, for the online conferences. We'll send that out later this week. A big thanks to those that attended the professional learning communities on feedback, and I really want to thank Simone for all her work there, and she was by herself there in the last one. I was getting back from a hike. And the PLCs, they really give us an opportunity to chip away at practices and it allows us to have a consistent message. So the key takeaway messages from that is that comments are directed to the student. So it's a you, and appropriate language associated with the student level. So, well developed or limited, that sort of stuff, but also the year level that they're in as well. You would speak differently to a year 7 than a year 12. A reminder that the comments need to include where the learner is going, where the learner is right now, and how does the learner get there. So the 3 facets, and it can be very short, just 1-sentence statements about those. Praise and feedback work best when separated, so that, not to put that great effort at the end, because that's what research would say that some students just take. And videos and slides using speech to text on Mac, and uploading PDFs, movies, Google Docs, photos to learning areas. And we thank Andrea also for discussing the reading rope and how she demonstrated how we can break down words into syllables to help students with issues with spelling and reading. So crash course in Pivot again. So a lot of our staff, we do have a lot of new staff. So we know that Pivot is the company that we employ to give us our feedback surveys. The pulse check survey is something that we'll explore during the year. I think we're exploring some 360-degree surveys for some of our middle leaders as well. This company's been going for about 7 or 8 years, and we sort of came in, the first surveys were last year. So they've really redefined, and they've actually updated greatly since last year. So there's a few different things there. We know that, developing teacher efficacy is huge. All the Pivot insights identify your strengths and use them to help you to improve in other areas. And feedback should not be considered at an end to itself, but should be the basis for positive change and growth. So those that were here last year, Jenny spoke about the experience that she had, receiving feedback, and it can be a bit of a jolt. Last year, I needed to make my lessons more interesting. I was quite offended. So a couple of tap dances later, and hopefully I'll expect a few better things. But look, it is you're going to have your lowest three and your highest three. But I think the whole process, when you actually take time to read through the questions, it actually it gets you thinking about all the facets of teaching. That's the way I look at it. They are all anonymous, so the management team do not see any individual surveys. All right, so that's your property. However, curriculum leaders, they aggregated against all faculties to give faculty goals and also whole school. So the data is absolutely rich, and the more surveys that we do, the better. But they are totally anonymous. You probably won't get exactly these sort of graphs because they've changed a little bit. In fact, they've made 3 domains instead of 5. I'll just leave them up there because that's the one on the left there is interactive, so you can actually click on that pie chart there over here, and you can actually sort of see the question. So it's really quite developed. And here's some bar graphs here as well. But look, we'll get on to the how you receive feedback next week. We'll get some items out for you. These will obviously have a big factor in your annual goal, which Michael will talk about in a sec. The Pivot have about 4 or so pages of what you can do if you receive sort of some feedback that's saying, well, it's probably not a strength, or an aspect of your teaching is not a strength. So they've really developed this, and when we saw it, it was just loads of information that you can go to their platform and receive that information to think about some things that you might do within your classes. Of course, you're going to be supported by school leadership. All the leadership team do these surveys as well. And more info will come about unpacking results a little bit later. So administratively, it's light touch. So it takes 5 to 7 minutes. And I set mine up today. I did my first class. I got 96% success with one student away. And I scheduled a Google Classroom announcement for 3:15. And so that came on, and then the students just jumped on. It is much better to do it in a class. If you send the link out and say, do this at home, you will get 30, 40%. So please take the time. It's extremely important to get it done and put value on this feedback process. And I totally understand that everyone has to get through content, has got assessments, but please make the effort to get all these surveys completed. Probably aim for about 80% success rate with the students. If you see 80%, that's worthwhile. And the more feedback that we get, the better aggregated it becomes. So it does finish on next Thursday. Make time at the beginning, or what I did, I worded the students up and I set it for 3:15. Well and truly finished by, it was 3:22 when I had that 96%. The students also know that they're confidential, so they have no troubles in doing that. But have the conversation about, this is to benefit them, and it's to benefit my teaching as a bit of feedback. I won't go through these questions, but these are the questions that the students are asked. And when the slideshow gets sent out a little bit later, you can have a look at that. They are in line with the AITSL standards. And so, just simple questions that are put into student language. There's the scale. Last year it was 5-point scale. It's a 6-point scale now. So kids aren't sitting on the fence at the fifth, 1 to 5. They're not sitting at number 3. So they've probably got to slightly disagree or slightly agree to really definitively give that feedback. Very simply, you just get everyone. Has everyone got their email? It would have come at 9 o'clock this morning. Please see Simone and myself if you didn't. All you do is you make sure you get your class. You cut and paste that send it out in an email to students, or as I just explained, put it onto the Google Classroom as a scheduled announcement. And the students then fill it in. It's really simple. They do have to put their student ID in, which is a 4 or 5 number ID, which is on the Simon on their Simon profile. The reason is, I know from experience, last year we had a couple of teachers that had 300%. We think, how can this happen? Because they'd sent out the same survey link, and whereas now that unique identification code allows the student to just put in one survey, so we're not going to get any more than 100%. So I hope that makes sense. There's a clip there introducing teachers to Pivot. That's from Pivot. That's just shows teachers discussing it. Please have a look at that. And Simone did a student presentation there very recently, a couple of weeks ago. And so there's a couple of links there to have a look at, and that was sent out to students. And also it's been heavily promoted to parents as well through the letters that they have received via Operoo. Yep. 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 All right. So yeah. Look, thank you for the process. As I said, we invest a lot. It's an investment in you guys. We do, we pay heavily for it, but we think it is such a great way to gather individual data for yourselves, but also faculty data and whole school data that we can, evidence-based practice, and so we can look at our goals going forward as a school, what we need to work on, and what are our strengths. And one of the main strengths last year was how our students felt that teachers respect them. I think that was number one. So perfect. What a great way to to have students react that way. That's it for me, and hand back to Michael.
All right, thanks, Hula. I'll be really fast because this stuff will get shared again. But the ARM process links so closely to Pivot. And despite our best efforts to introduce this last year, we know that last year ended up a little bit going pear-shaped, and we didn't get to finish this process that we started. So just a reminder that the ARM process, the annual review meeting process for 2022, will follow with your Pivot data. So you can't start this process until you get your data from Pivot back. But I'll just, this slideshow just reminds everyone where they need to find the ARM process. You find it on EMS 360, and so you log on to the dashboard. Once you do that, the first thing that you'll need to do once you get your data at the end of term from Pivot is to think about a couple of goals that you want to work on. And as we've discussed, one of those should be from your areas of improvement. That might be one of your 3 lowest scores from all the feedback that you get from students. And you'll be able to access these slides again and be able to find where you go to do all this sort of stuff. So our goals are being set. If you recall from last year, you get those 3 areas of strength, the 3 areas for growth, and that's really what this is all about. It's about growth. And so you want to look at those ones and say, okay, that's something that I want to add into my teaching practice over the course of the year. Justin's already shown that one, so I'll skip from that. Remember that last year what we did was we put you in a group of 3. So you'll be in with 2 other buddies or in a group of 3. And as a result of that, we'd like you to touch base with the other 2 people who are in your group, and maybe, or one of the 2 people that are in your group of 3, and make sure that you, discuss with them maybe a goal, or, you could email them and sort of say, I'm thinking about working on this, and they might send you back and say, yeah, well, I'm the same, or I'm going to focus on something else. Most importantly, all teachers are required to have their goals entered on EMS 360 by the 20th of May, which is about the 4th week of term 2. It says the middle of term 2, but believe it or not, the 20th of May is nearly the middle of term 2. The mentor groups have been allocated. So you're in your group of 3. New staff, we have made a point of putting you in with your buddy who's been looking after you, and then one other person as well. So Again, this whole slideshow will be living in the Emmanuel Go-To Drive, and I'll make reference to it in staff messages as well. These people become your proofreading report buddies also throughout the course of the year. Once we get into the practice of actually working on setting our goals, remember you move to the stage where you'll have a reviewer, so it'll be a member of the leadership team who will be looking after you and the other people in your group, and the people in your group who are your buddies might identify, or you will identify some achievements when you think that you have met some of your goals that you've set. One of the things that we also aimed to introduce last year, but we were never able to actually get happening because of COVID, was the peer observation. This can be 15 minutes. It does not have to be you organising a whole lesson to go into somebody else's class and have somebody else come into your class. But it might be something in particular that you're focusing on. It might be the start of your lessons, or it might be how you wrap up a lesson at the end. And what we really just want to encourage is more collaboration amongst colleagues and getting into other people's classrooms and seeing what other people are doing and learning from that. So that gives you some outline there. Catherine Ryan actually did a bit of work on this peer observation document a couple of years ago, and so there's a link to where you can find that and how you might go about that. It's not about going into a colleague's class and then giving them a critique at the end of it like you might some sort of pre-service teacher, telling them that they could have done a better job. It's really about collaboration and getting some feedback about what you're focusing on. You can always upload that document to EMS 360. Your mentor might give you some feedback around that in EMS 360, and then the third stage of the process is to organise your time with your member of the leadership team who's performing your review to sit down and have a discussion around how it all went and what you might like to focus on for next year, PD that you might be interested in doing, leadership positions that you might be interested in applying for in the future, or other decisions that you might like to be making about your career and so forth. There's also a checklist that goes with this which has all the dates and sets out when you should be trying to aim to achieve all this sort of stuff. It's all, as I say, in the Emmanuel Go-To folder. Aiming to get it all wrapped up by November. 4:59 and 50 seconds. How's that? Thanks for your willingness to engage in the annual review process. We're mindful of the fact that it was a staff meeting tonight and the open, but we really needed to have this meeting so everyone knew what was doing. So thanks a lot. Have a great week. Yeah. The numbers dwindle every day, but we get some back and then a few more go. But thanks for being here. Thanks, Pete.